It was nice and sunny out, so I decided to start filming, and by the time I set everything up and sat down and pressed record, it got super dark out and there was just some thunder literally the second I pressed record. My city is not nicknamed Rainsville for no reason. I love the sound of rain so much, just not when I'm filming. We also have needed rain so badly for the frogs, that's right, the amphibians. It has been so dry lately, and we have needed this downpour for the longest time ever so they can hydrate themselves and, you know, their habitats aren't completely dried out because they currently really are. But I would have loved for it to start raining in like 30 minutes or so when I can just like sit and stare out my window, which is what I'm doing right now, but I need to be filming. Anyways, you know what? Rain, bad for my video, good for the frogs. So you know what? If it's good for the frogs, it's good for the video, right? Hello everybody, happy Frog Friday. My name is Carly and this is a wrap-up of all the books that I read in March, which I know this is late, but I realized when I was thinking about what to film this week that I just skipped over March entirely because I had a whole flooding situation at the end of the month and I just kind of, you know, threw the whole month out of my head. So we're going back to that right now. This video is going to be kind of all over the place though, and I'm going to be talking about some other life stuff beforehand. If you're only here for the books, you know, you can just skip ahead a little bit. I'm going to have timestamps for everything, so just fast forward. But if you want to hear about some random stuff, stick around. That does sound like a nice thunderstorm is rolling in, which means I will probably get 2 more minutes of filming in until it starts downpouring. So during March I had my spring break, which I went to the beach with my family. I go to school not in the same state that I'm from, so I don't get to see my family all that often, but they decided to come down to Florida to see me, so we went to the beach. My spring break is obviously only 1 week, but my parents wanted to go to the beach for 2 weeks. Their plan was to come get me, go to the beach, and then after the first week they were gonna drop me back off at school and then go back to the beach for another week. But once we got there, after a few days, I was just kind of like, you know what? I think I can skip another week. Who needs school? Like, I'll just do my work online. I don't need to go to lectures. So I decided to extend my spring break to 2 weeks. And they brought my dog Hugo down, so that was really nice. I got to hang out with him and force him to cuddle with me, which he hates to do, but you know what? I don't get to see him that often. I usually only see him during summer and like Christmas, so that's what he was gonna have to do. He was super intrigued by the brown anoles, which I don't know if you know what those are, but they're like, anoles are little brown lizards that if you live in Florida, you know they're literally everywhere. They're just all over the place, and we don't have them where I'm from, so he usually likes to chase toads and frogs and stuff and like watch them hop. He's scared of them, but he likes to watch them hop. But this was like a fun new thing that he could chase around, these little brown anoles, which we had like a fenced in backyard. We don't have that at home either, so he was really enjoying getting to go in the backyard and just run around however he wanted to. But like, he was so ultra focused, hyper focused on these brown anoles. He would go outside and immediately look for them. One thing is he like sucked at finding them. He only found them if I spotted them for him pretty much. He would like go to the same spot that he found the very first one and just like stare at the ground hoping that it would appear, and if he did find one it would like run away and he would still be staring at the first spot when it was 20 feet away already. Hugo. I don't know if I've mentioned it yet on here, but I do collect fossil shark teeth, so while most people are just relaxing at the beach and enjoying themselves, I spent the majority of the time looking for these shark teeth, which that was actually what my first tattoo was based off of. It's a shark tooth, and I actually brought in one shark tooth that I found. It was so stupid. I was like 18 years old and I just really wanted a tattoo, so like 10 o'clock at night, I just walked into a random shop nearby and was like, can anyone give me a tattoo? And I brought one of the shark teeth that I found, and she like traced around it and stuff. So, you know, I didn't do any research beforehand into the artist or anything like that. It's probably not the best idea, but it was fun. And I'm gonna show you some footage of all the teeth that I found during the 2 weeks that I was there. I'm curious to see how many teeth you guys think that is. So I want you to leave a comment down below how many you think this is, and then in the next video I will reveal that number. Here's a cool seashell imprint. Some pufferfish mouth plates. And this is actually a piece of a megalodon tooth. And then just some cool other biggish teeth that I found throughout the 2 weeks. And some shark tooth ASMR. Enjoy. Also, side note, if you have any tattoos, you know how you're supposed to take good care of them and keep putting sunscreen on them like all the time, you know, because sun exposure can damage them. I absolutely hate the feeling of sunscreen or like lotion on my hands. I can't stand it. So like every time I put sunscreen on my tattoos, I have to go wash my hands after because I don't want that feeling on them. But probably like a year or two ago, I decided to buy one of these little like sunscreen stick things, and let me tell you, this is life-changing. If you've never gotten one before for tattoos, highly recommend. I told one of my friends about it recently and they agreed with me. Changes the game, because now like every morning just grab the stick, throw it on the tattoos, good to go, don't have to wash the hands. I'm much more likely to put it on. And like when we were at the beach, I think it was the last day, I just did not care about reapplying. I was like, you know what, it's the last day, I can get burned, whatever. But I still always care about the tattoos, and I had my sunscreen stick, so I only reapplied over the tattoos, and I found out that it definitely is a good brand sunscreen, and it definitely works because, let me see, oh, it's so dark in here. Oh, I don't think you can see it anymore, but on my like turtle tattoo right here, I had the worst sunburn right on this forearm, and I had like this straight line right here where over here was completely red, and then underneath on the tattoo was perfectly fine. So I'm like, at least I know the sunscreen works, but it did look really stupid for quite a while because it was just a straight line right here distinguishing the two sections. But hey, the sunscreen works, so you know. So another thing, the house we rented, it wasn't on the beach, but it had like a little dock, and it had like water access in the backyard to this kind of tiny little lagoon type of thing, so there were like tons of wildlife there. I brought my camera, so I tried to get a lot of photos, but wasn't all that successful. Although it was so frustrating, there was this one time where I don't even know what it was, I just saw like out of the corner of my eye some like giant hawk or something swooped down into the water, grabbed a fish, and like flew off with it, like grabbed it in its claws. And I was so annoyed. I like immediately bolted up, grabbed the camera, and ran outside, but obviously it was gone before I could get a picture. But yeah, there were lots of cool birds flying in the background. There was like a little osprey nest right next to our place, so I got a lot of pictures of the ospreys up in their nest. Didn't see any gators back there though, which was kind of surprising, but I get enough gators where I'm at. Anyways, overall, it was a pretty lazy reading month. I really did not get that much done. I barely picked up a book the entire 2 weeks that I was at the beach, which I feel like most people do a lot more reading when they're at the beach because they're like relaxed and they just sit in a chair at the beach and read. But I was up and looking for shark teeth the whole time, and I didn't feel like picking up a book. But anyways, here are the 6 books that I read throughout March. Anyone else an energy drink addict? Okay, so the first book that I read was Foe by Iain Reid, and this was my first book by Iain Reid, and I was pleasantly surprised. I gave this one 4 stars. It was a super short read. There were these 2 characters, this couple, living together like out on a farm, and one day they get a visit from this man, and he comes and he tells the husband, he's like, "Congratulations, you've been selected. You're going to space." And he's like, "Excuse me?" what do you mean I'm going to space? He was like, I did not ask for that at all. And they're like, no, don't worry, you just like won the lottery. Like, nobody entered this. You don't get to say no. You're going to space. I'm not going to tell you when it's going to happen, but it could be now, it could be in a few days, could be in a few months, few years. You won't know until I show up here again. Hope all goes well. See you later. And then a few years later, he shows up again, and he's like, okay, now's the time. We're gonna send you to space now. But part of the deal with the space is they don't want the wife to feel bad about it happening, and they don't want her life to completely change or anything. So they're gonna put a replacement husband in for him when he's in space, and then they'll take it away when he comes back. It's supposed to be like everything will be back to normal, you know? So it's one of those like AI, robot, like sentience type of stories. There's a couple twists in them. I don't want to spoil anything. I did guess one of them, but I did not guess the other. I thought it was fun, gave it 4 stars. I definitely want to read more books by him. What's his other huge one? I'm thinking of ending things. The rain has started. I think I'm just gonna keep going. Might be a vibe. This is kind of, you know, this is a weird video anyways, so you know, you what do you expect? You know, you watch my videos, this is what you're gonna get. I live in Florida. It's gonna rain. Okay, the next book that I read in March was The Outsider by Stephen King. I only gave this one 3 stars. I did like the premise of this one. So like this kid gets murdered, and this one guy, there's like a ton of circumstantial evidence, and like clearly he must have done it. There's like his DNA is all over the place. People saw him at the scene. People saw him with the kid beforehand. Like it had to have been this guy. It was like a airtight case. Like there's no way they could have lost. But then he also had a airtight alibi. He was at this like work conference or something many miles away during the time, and like he had all these people vouch for him that he was there, so there's absolutely no way he could have done it. It was a scenario of like he 100% had to have done it, and he 100% could not have done it. So the book is trying to figure out, how was this man in 2 places at once? It is a more supernatural King book. I think that's my thing. I'm just not really into his supernatural stuff as much. There are a lot of trigger warnings for this book for child abuse, you know, not only harm but also sexual stuff. So if that bothers you, that is talked about quite a bit in this book. I ended up giving that one 3 stars. I thought it was just okay. Like I said, not a huge fan of supernatural or where it ended up going. I don't know, I wasn't getting King vibes from it that much, which doesn't really make sense because I feel like there were a lot of aspects that he usually puts in his books, but it just didn't quite do it for me. You know, it didn't really feel like him. I was more bored by it the whole time. I felt like it was too long also. Okay, then literally the only book that I picked up during those 2 weeks at the beach was Adrift by Stephen Callahan. This book is actually a true story of this guy, Stephen, who got lost at sea. He's a sailor, and he wanted to sail his boat across the ocean, which he had done like multiple times before. He's a very like pro sailor. You know, it's just his passion in life. But this one particular time, something happened, and he got lost at sea for, let me see, 76 days. So this is his true story. It was based on like obviously the story, but he like kept a diary while he was in the ocean. So this is like a compilation of those diary entries with additional narration by him, and he also added in some drawings of situations to show you like kind of the more technical stuff within it. Oh my god, it's boring. One other cool thing about this, let's see if you can actually see this. So he included a map in this. The map has like each day marked off with where he calculated he was at compared to when he got back where he probably actually was. And it has like a thing of each day saying, oh, this is when the first shark came, this is when this happened to the boat, this is when this happened, this is when I saw this plane, this is when I saw this boat on this day. So I found myself flipping back and forth to the map to see you know, where he was in his journey, so I thought that was pretty cool. But I have not given this a rating because unfortunately I have not finished it yet. I just kind of set it aside because I did not have time. Sorry, I'm so distracted by this rain. It is like sheets of rain. There are literally branches falling off this tree outside right now. I did not DNF it yet, but you know, April is coming up with all the readathons and I just did not have the time to keep reading it, so put it off till May. Maybe June. I don't know if I'll pick it up again. I read it a little bit on the beach. It was interesting, right? Okay. But the thing is, the chapters are really long, and this is how far I got into it. But the chapters are just so long. They're like 20 or 30 pages, which I just wasn't really in the reading mood, so I really would have benefited from shorter chapters because I did not have the willpower to pick up the book because I knew I was going to have to read 20 or 30 pages at that time. If I had had those, like 2-page, 5-page chapters, I may have been more inclined to pick it up and read it. I do want to get back to it. I do want to, finish up his story at some point. Okay, so you can probably tell from the lighting, but the thunderstorm is over, so I am back to filming. The next book that I read was Episode 13 by Dilouie, and I read the majority of this on the car ride back from the beach. I did have the physical book with me, but I was reading it in the car and I had my dog Hugo sitting on my lap because he is a little baby and the only time he can relax in the car and not be panting and stressed out is when he's sitting on someone's lap. So that was my job during the car ride, was to relax him. And he did fall asleep, but he fell asleep on top of my arm, so I couldn't really use my arms to read a physical book. So I was reading the majority of it in only audio, which if you are going to read this book, highly recommend it in audio form because it bumped my rating up a whole star. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, but I probably would have only given it 3 stars if I had read it only in physical copy because the audio narration was just that good. I lied, the rain is back. But the audio narration has songs, it has stairs creaking, people laughing, different voices, whispers, the sounds of objects moving, just a bunch of random stuff. Like every little thing that's described in the book or not described in the book is put into this audiobook. They did a great job. They clearly spent a lot of time and money on making it. I realized I didn't explain what the book was about. It's about a ghost hunter TV show. So this film crew is going into this haunted house that's supposed to be the most haunted place in America that's going to be demolished soon. But they've been given, I think, 2 days to stay there and try to catch things on footage. The thing that's different about this TV show is that it's led by this couple, and the husband in the couple is the ghost hunter, and he truly believes in ghosts. But then the wife is a scientist, and she's there to disprove everything that they're finding. So that aspect is kind of interesting and unique for one of these types of TV shows, because, usually they just have stuff and they're like, oh my god, did you hear that? And you listen to the recording and you're like, what are they saying? But then when they're like, oh, they said my name is Robert, and you listen to it again, you're like, oh my god, his name is Robert. So she's there to be the person that's like, no, that literally sounds like nothing. That was, the wind was moving in that section of the video, whatever, I don't know. Just the actual science part of that. She's there to disprove it, which was a cool concept. This is a pretty slow book. Like, nothing really happens until probably a little before the halfway mark, but then, especially if you're listening to the audiobook, things just start getting crazy. One thing I will say is that if you've read House of Leaves, there is a section of this book that is like, it feels like a straight ripoff from that book. Like, the exact same stuff happens. So I think if you've never read House of Leaves, you'll be pretty interested by that scene and like surprised by it. But if you've read House of Leaves, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when you get there, because you won't be surprised when something big happens in that section, because it's the exact same thing that happens in the other book. Overall, the ending was pretty cool and the audiobook was great, but I think the concept ended up being better than the actual execution of the story. One other thing that I didn't mention is that it's a mixed media format book, so there's lots of different like transcripts and charts and tables and like letters and stuff. So if you like reading that kind of book, I think it would be great. I did read some of it actually physically because I didn't get through all of it in the car ride, but I think it's one of those ones that'd probably be best combined audio and physical since it is mixed media to get to see some of that. But if you're only going to go with one of them, definitely do audio. And I don't know about you guys, but at least for me, my mom loves watching those like ghost hunter shows, so I grew up watching them. So when I heard the premise of this, I was super excited for it. The next book I read was Shark: Why We Need to Save the World's Most Misunderstood Predator by Paul de Gelder. And Paul de Gelder is a shark attack survivor. He lost one of his arms in a shark attack, and he's actually on a lot of the Shark Week specials, so you've probably seen him before even if you don't know who he is. But he's kind of just like telling his life story, and when I was reading this book, someone did ask me if it was like a fun shark book, and I wouldn't necessarily call it fun. It is a nonfiction story, kind of like memoir combined with mainly a focus on sharks and like why they're cool. It's nonfiction, so there is a large section on it about the fishing industry and how your actions of consuming fish contribute to the decline of these shark species, specifically because of bycatch. If you don't know what bycatch is, when these big commercial fishing boats, when they go out and they catch these fish, they have these gigantic nets that are, trawling along the ocean floor, and the thing that happens is that, say you're looking for tuna or whatever, not only are tuna getting caught in these nets, but all kinds of other things are getting caught. So those other things are the bycatch. So that's sea turtles, sharks, other types of rare fish, dolphins, whatever. All these things are getting stuck, and a lot of them end up getting killed as unintended deaths because of the fishing industry. So it's super important information, and it kind of opens your eyes if you've never heard about those types of things. So I do highly recommend it for that. And there's just a lot of cool fun facts about sharks in there, but know that it's not necessarily a fun read and it's more informational. And I gave Sharks 4 stars. The next book that I read in March was If It Bleeds by Stephen King, which is a collection of short stories. There's only 4 stories in this, so they're kind of like novella lengths instead. You know how Stephen King is, his short story is the length of a normal sized book or a novella. I was actually not a fan at all of the first one, Mr. Harrigan's Phone. I just thought it was boring, and it just kind of like ended like the same thing just kept happening over and over again. I wasn't like shocked or scared by any of it. My favorite story in this was The Life of Chuck. I was very intrigued by it. Again, this had like you've heard this in other videos of mine, but it has like a Twilight Zone feel to it, which I love, that kind of like weird story to it. Rats was pretty interesting. It wasn't a favorite or anything, but I did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty creepy, and it was a good short story for what it was. I enjoyed the title story, If It Bleeds. That one, it was good to get to see Holly again. I would say overall this was like a 4-star for me. Other than Mr. Harrigan's Phone, I really enjoyed most of them, and I for some reason didn't think I was gonna like this one as much, so I was pleasantly surprised. This one definitely has a focus on technology. That's a theme throughout all of it, and how we're relying more on technology and the consequences that could come from that. And you can also clearly tell from this short story collection that Stephen King is getting older, and he is definitely starting to think more about death and his own life and legacy that he's left behind. I think that's probably, a big fear of his, as well as a lot of older people, is exiting this life. I personally think that that is something that he's been thinking a lot about nowadays. You can clearly see that in these stories. And then the last book that I read in March was The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, which I just put that in my last video for booktok, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I gave it 2 stars. We don't need to talk about it anymore. And that's all the books. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Comment down below your thoughts on any of these books if you've read them. And also remember to put your guess for the amount of shark teeth that was in that video down below. Just for fun. I'm very curious because I feel like people tend to underestimate the number quite a lot. For today's frog fact, I thought I would talk about the desert rain frog since it's been raining the whole video. These frogs don't croak like normal frogs, but they instead make a high-pitched squeaking sound that sounds like a dog toy. You may have already seen a video of one of these because they went viral, but if you have not, I will put a video above. Highly recommend watching it because they are very cute. Thanks again for watching. I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.